For 3 decades, Johnny Carson sat in living rooms across America, greeting viewers with that warm, easy smile that felt like a friend stopping by for coffee. Audiences thought they were watching casual conversations with the nation's biggest stars. They laughed, nodded, and marveled at the charm of Hollywood legends. But behind the laughter, behind the impeccable timing and effortless humor, a much darker story often hid in plain sight. Many of Carson's most famous guests were battling demons, addictions that were invisible to viewers but palpable to him. Johnny Carson had an uncanny gift for reading people. A former Tonight Show producer recalled that Carson could detect the faintest tremor of unease, the slightest distraction, or the subtle signs of intoxication. He knew when someone was hiding pain behind alcohol, drugs, or prescription medication. Sometimes he would protect his guests by steering conversations away from dangerous topics. Other times he nudged them just enough to reveal their vulnerability, all while maintaining dignity and entertainment value. To the casual viewer, it was seamless. But Carson was performing a delicate live balancing act, a high-wire rescue operation executed with humor, tact, and empathy. Today, we take a closer look at 7 of Johnny Carson's guests who battled addiction, exploring how these iconic figures lived their struggles in public view and how Carson navigated the tension between showmanship and compassion. 1. Richard Pryor, comedy's tormented genius. When Richard Pryor walked onto Carson's stage, audiences witnessed a whirlwind of humor and insight. He was a comedic force, transforming personal pain into laughter that cut deep, revealing social truths about race, poverty, and injustice. He wasn't just funny, he was revolutionary. Yet, behind the rapid-fire jokes and larger-than-life energy, Pryor was often battling severe addiction. Cocaine, alcohol, and other substances fueled some of his most brilliant performances, but they also carried him toward danger. In the 1980s, Pryor experienced a harrowing low point. During a drug-induced psychosis, he doused himself in rum and set himself on fire, an event that shocked even those closest to him. Carson, however, recognized the signs long before the cameras rolled. A Tonight Show staff member explained that Pryor's energy would sometimes become manic, his eyes darting, thoughts scattering mid-sentence. But rather than exposing him, Carson adapted, asking questions that demanded simple, concrete responses or subtly redirecting topics to avoid triggering destructive behavior. One particularly poignant interview took place shortly after Pryor's self-immolation. Other interviewers might have sensationalized the tragedy, but Carson allowed Pryor to tell his story on his own terms. He offered a balance of space and structure, preventing the conversation from spiraling while still honoring Pryor's truth. Pryor later acknowledged Carson's rare restraint, praising him as one of the few who never exploited his vulnerabilities. Despite this protection, Pryor's addiction would haunt him for the rest of his life, contributing to health issues that ultimately culminated in his passing. Watching Pryor on Carson's couch, we see both the genius of a performer and the fragility of a man fighting invisible battles. 2. Judy Garland, the fragile legend. Judy Garland's presence on The Tonight Show was magnetic and heart-wrenching all at once. By the early 1960s, her struggles with prescription drugs and alcohol were well known within Hollywood, though the public largely remembered her as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Garland's addiction had deep roots. As a teenager at MGM, she was routinely given amphetamines to stay thin and keep up with grueling shooting schedules, followed by barbiturates to counteract the stimulants. This cycle persisted for decades, leaving her health, focus, and emotional well-being compromised. Carson's approach to Garland was nothing short of masterful. He adjusted his questions, shortened them, and often provided cues to keep her on track. He celebrated her accomplishments, allowing her talent to shine even when her body and mind were worn. One 1964 appearance illustrates this perfectly. Garland struggled with coherence, yet Carson's gentle guidance and charm kept the audience focused on her artistry rather than her vulnerabilities. Unlike others in Hollywood who might have exploited her condition, Carson seemed to understand that Garland was a victim of systemic exploitation. She had been medicated to meet industry demands, not because of personal moral failings. By creating a protective environment, Carson allowed Garland to maintain her dignity and showcase her talent until her untimely death in 1969. In her final months, Carson's kindness ensured that the public remembered the legend, not just the struggles behind the curtain. 3. Dean Martin, the functioning alcoholic. Dean Martin, the ultimate picture of suave ease, often appeared on Carson's stage with a tumbler in hand and a charming grin. The public saw the carefree entertainer. Few realized the reality behind the act. Martin's drunken persona was largely a crafted performance, a brilliant strategy that concealed a serious drinking problem. Over the years, however, the lines between performance and reality blurred. By the late 1960s and 1970s, Martin had become what specialists describe as a functional alcoholic. He could perform flawlessly, yet the personal cost was immense: isolation, emotional numbness, and physical deterioration. Carson, who himself had complex relationships with alcohol, recognized Martin's struggle. He never called it out, but his knowing smile and subtle redirection created a space where Martin could exist without judgment. A 1975 interview reveals this dynamic. Martin admitted needing a drink just to feel normal. Carson nodded, acknowledged the moment, and smoothly redirected the conversation, offering empathy without spectacle. Even as Martin's charm remained intact, the underlying truth of his life, the prison built by his own performance, was never fully visible to audiences. Carson's discretion allowed Martin to maintain his dignity while giving viewers glimpses of a man whose public image and private reality were inextricably intertwined. 4. Truman Capote, the literary butterfly with broken wings. Truman Capote, with his high-pitched voice and flamboyant personality, was television gold. Audiences loved his wit, charm, and ability to reveal Hollywood's secrets with audacious honesty. But many of Capote's best television moments came during periods of severe substance abuse, alcohol, prescription medications, and cocaine, which slowly eroded both his personal life and creative brilliance. Carson's instinct was protective. He could spot impairment, glazed eyes, slurred speech, and dangerously unfiltered commentary. When Capote threatened to cross lines that could damage relationships or reputation, Carson intervened with humor, a commercial break, or a gentle shift in conversation. Later appearances show Capote struggling visibly with withdrawal and focus, yet Carson's subtle guidance created moments of coherence and dignity. By the time Capote passed in 1984, his creative decline was well documented. But The Tonight Show preserved the wit, intelligence, and vibrancy that audiences needed to remember rather than the shadow of addiction. 5. Elizabeth Taylor, the violet-eyed survivor. Elizabeth Taylor was Hollywood royalty, yet her life offstage was a labyrinth of pain, surgeries, and dependency on prescription medications and alcohol. From childhood, she endured physical trauma that led to years of chemical reliance. Carson approached Taylor with sensitivity, adjusting his interviewing style whenever she appeared affected. By turning complex questions into manageable choices and giving subtle verbal cues, he allowed Taylor to retain composure and showcase her brilliance. Taylor's public acknowledgement of her addictions and her entry into the Betty Ford Center marked a turning point for American discourse on addiction. Subsequent Carson appearances celebrated her recovery, giving her a platform to share her story with honesty and dignity. Her journey illustrates resilience, the power of human connection, and the positive impact of compassionate interviewing. 6. Peter O'Toole, the last of the Hellraisers. Peter O'Toole embodied the wild, indulgent lifestyle of old-school actors: heavy drinking, boisterous behavior, and a flair for theatrical excess. Unlike some guests, O'Toole's drinking was an open part of his identity, almost a badge of honor. Carson's approach here was different. He acknowledged O'Toole's comfort with alcohol, allowing the actor to share stories and demonstrate his brilliance even inebriated. This created television that was both entertaining and intellectually compelling. Despite the romanticized image, the cost was real. Long-term health issues and lost opportunities shadowed his career. Later appearances captured a more reflective O'Toole, sober and contemplative, offering a nuanced portrait of talent intertwined with excess. Carson allowed viewers to witness both dimensions without judgment, a masterclass in adaptive interviewing. 7. Johnny Cash, the man in Black's Darkest Shadows. Johnny Cash was an American icon. Tall, commanding, and irresistibly authentic. Yet his immense talent was shadowed by addiction to amphetamines and barbiturates, used to manage the grueling demands of touring and performance. Carson recognized these struggles immediately. With Cash, he created a structured environment, clear, direct questions, steady pacing, and gentle redirection when substance effects became apparent. Cash's story, however, is one of redemption. Through love, spiritual growth, and recovery, he transformed from a man haunted by addiction into one with clarity, purpose, and renewed artistic focus. Cash's appearances on Carson's show offer one of the most complete public testimonies of addiction and recovery captured on television. They are not just performances, they are chronicles of struggle, resilience, and transformation, providing hope to countless viewers. Johnny Carson was more than a talk show host. He was a compassionate observer of human frailty, a subtle protector of those in pain, and a master of maintaining dignity under the glare of television lights. His guests, from comedic geniuses to Hollywood royalty, brought their vulnerabilities to his couch, and he met them with empathy, humor, and respect. The stories of Pryor, Garland, Martin, Capote, Taylor, O'Toole, and Cash remind us that fame, talent, and charm cannot shield one from human frailty. Carson's ability to balance entertainment with genuine compassion created television that was timeless, and for some of his guests, a rare moment of grace in the midst of personal struggle. In revisiting these appearances, we don't just see the legends, we see the people beneath the public masks. We see the fragility, the courage, the moments of recovery, and the tragic consequences. And through it all, Carson remains a steadfast witness, guiding, protecting, and celebrating humanity in its fullest complexity.